Welcome back to the Growing Minds Garden. Please watch part 1 of our planting videos first, where we show you how we planted kale and fava beans. Now enjoy part 2.
Using the broad fork. This is the broad fork. And unlike a rototiller that turns the soil fairly shallow, maybe like 6 inches, this doesn't actually, ideally, this is not turning it over, but aerating it down to like, 12, 15 inches there. Once our soil gets really loamy, meaning it's got a lot of organic matter in it, it won't fully turn the soil over, it'll just aerate it. Right now it's so clayey that it still kind of breaks it up into chunks. It's also pretty wet. This has been a very dry spring, but we just got some rain, and what was probably ideal amount of moisture for digging up the soil has become a bit too much. We're going to continue our experiment from that row of a half-tilled or dug up and half untilled row and see how that goes. There are different schools of thought when it comes to digging up the soil. One says annual plants, like vegetables, domesticated plants, really want light, fluffy, loose soil so their roots can dig deep easily and they can access the nutrients that they need. The other school of thought says, well, every time you disturb the soil, all of the microbes and the worms and everybody gets all shaken up, and it takes them a long time to reorganize themselves. So maybe it's better just to keep adding things on top, like in a forest, right? Nobody tills the forest. Organic matter just falls and decomposes right where it is. So this year we're going to try some experiments. We're doing a few rows that are half tilled or dug up and half left untilled. And we'll put the same plant, the same vegetable crop all through the same row, but with half tilled and half untilled, and we'll see what we end up with in a couple of weeks. Pak Choy no-till experiment. So this bed that I was broad forking earlier, I broad forked and dug up with the spading fork only until here. So this side has been dug up and disturbed, and this side has only been amended with, everything's been amended with the same lime and fertilizer and the same amount of compost on the top. So we've got Pak Choy seedlings going in, and I'm doing the same number of large seedlings here as large seedlings there. So that should, because sometimes the seedlings are small, sometimes they're big. I always choose the biggest ones first, but I'm putting the biggest ones first, some of them here, and saving some big ones to go in here so that way it doesn't mess up our experiment. We did top this untilled soil with a pretty thick layer of compost. So there's still plenty of, like, I can dig down even just with my hand through the compost. The hard soil doesn't start till there. So that hopefully will be enough to give our little pak choy roots what they need to grow. The other thing that makes me interested in this is now that we have been working with this soil for a number of years, I broke off a chunk of it and looked at it and realized that even though it's very clayey, there's lots of worm activity, lots of worm holes through that soil, so it should be pretty porous in terms of water running through it, even though it's fairly clayey. So we'll keep checking on this two-sided no-till experiment and decide if that's something that we want to keep doing in the future, maybe with a full row. leftover seedlings. One recommendation is to save leftover seedlings after planting a row in order to fill in the spaces. If a seedling got damaged, doesn't grow properly, or for whatever reason isn't looking very healthy in another couple weeks, we would have these extra leftovers to fill in any spaces that are left by those unsuccessful starts.
So we have all our pak choy, cauliflower, broccoli, and kale in these rows with fava beans in between. They're all ready to grow. The last thing we're putting in today is lettuce. So I put down compost and fertilizer with lettuce seeds. Lettuce doesn't need to be planted very deep, so just having a little compost on top is all it needs. Thanks for joining us while we plant our garden. See you next time!